Good pre-noon, everybody. Welcome to Friday the 13th, final day of the sessions. I appreciate you all being here. This list is the list of people who have volunteered to come up on this stage and give a lightning talk. Quick reminder, lightning talks are 5 or fewer minutes. They don't have to speak the entire 5 minutes, and we do not provide AV. That being said, I'm going to call you once. If you don't show up, I put you at the bottom of the list, and then I call the next person. So I hope that you will keep track of your order here, and idea, when you're the next speaker, move up front so you can get up here quickly, because we're trying to keep this moving, Mr. Benny. Keep it moving. And everybody in the room who has hair the color of mine will recognize that quote. So first, Peter Erickson on So I Joined a Startup, What Now?
Yeah. So I'm doing lightning talk on So I Joined a Startup, What Now? This is like generally startups are organically grown, like they are a guy with a good idea that apparently others thought was a good idea, so they made some money, and then they needed a second server, and then they needed 10, and then they needed 10 other that weren't set up in the same way, and maybe at another place. So you have islands everywhere, and maybe features were slightly more important than documentation. So documentation is outdated, and that's good documentation, if there is any. Like my last job, I got an Excel file with IP addresses. That was the entire system documentation. No names, no nothing, just allocated IP addresses. And how are you going to work with this? Because you are hired as the first SA there, and you're an expert. And you have to realize that you are a super expert. They want to know what they did wrong, and you have to tell them many times. So the first thing you need to know, and that I personally do it in the interviewing process, is to get mandate. Get the CEO and the board on board what you intend to do. Like, I will not be nice, toes will be stepped on, feelings will be hurt. But you have to have a clear plan from the beginning and forcefully implement it, because it will be better in the long run. Because when you grow, you can't have your islands left that you have built somewhat on. You have to forcefully get your policies in. And also sometimes this means that you have to overrule like the CTO, because the CTO might be one of the prime developers that started this thing, that made it into what it is now. So you need absolutely have mandate to do it. And then do everything you need, like monitoring metrics and documentation and everything, and make everyone on board why it's a good thing. So I can only recommend that. And also this is not for everyone, because like you will in the start often be feeling very, very alone and stressed. So, but it's really fun when it works, because you can go from like action time on problems from hours down to minutes, because you have the tools to make that happen. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say about startup things.
Thanks, Peter. Quick reminder for the speakers, we are video recording, so please make sure you stay between the podium and me when you're speaking. Next speaker is Julie Gunderson on Power of a Positive Community. Julie?
Well, hi, I'm Julie Gunderson, and I'm with Taos Consulting, and I wanted to talk about the power of a positive community. So I need your help to start this out. Can I get somebody to give me a woohoo? All right, all right. So I was gonna say, on the count of 3 now, can everybody give me a woohoo? So ready? 1, 2, 3, woohoo! It generally works better when only one person gives you the first woohoo, by the way. But what I wanted to talk about is, one voice versus a group of voices. So one voice can make a change in the world and a difference in the way that people see themselves and what they feel they have the ability to do. But then we get a community together, like what we have at the conference, and a community of people and voices that are supportive, that encourage, that help us learn and grow. So how do we take that, what we have here, and how do we bring it back into our work environment? What do we need to do so that this isn't just once a year when we come to the conference? And I think that there's a few things that we can do. And part of it is creating an environment where people feel able to be vulnerable, where they can be safe with vulnerability, where that you can support them and encourage people. And I think that's something that we do really well at conferences. And I think going back to work, it just takes one person to make that change. One of the things that we use at Taos is Slack. Slack is a great way for our consultants to get together, to communicate, to build that community. I mean, they talk about problems that they're working on or the best way to brew beer. So it's just how can you get your community talking and know that they have the support from other people? And that's just one thing that I take away from the conferences is that there's a lot of power behind a community. And so if we can be positive and help each other, we can all make the world a better place. So thank you for being such a great community here.
Thank you, Julie. Our next speaker is co-chairing next year's conference, John Arashide, and he'll be talking about choices made tied to career evolution.
Welcome. First off, is everyone having a great time? Has this been a good week for you guys? Lots of stuff to take back? Cool. What I wanted to talk about is give you a little bit of my background on how I used IT as the underlying theme throughout my career in all the different things that I've done, and how you can actually enhance your career or make change for yourself as you try to move into new opportunities. Many of us, if you're like me, have had the challenge of different projects that maybe you don't have the skill in, or you don't have maybe a confidence in that particular area. I think it's really important that we understand that every opportunity that we have, and whether or not we have good, bad, or ugly experiences in those, shape who we are as we develop through our career. For me, I started out doing IT, going through computer science at the University of Buffalo, and I had an opportunity to work on, this is going back a bit, on a 4.3 BSD port and finding a bug in RCP and actually working on something like that. And it opened me up to doing more development. It also opened me up to understanding how each of the programs that I worked on tied in with IT. As you hear with SRE roles, with DevOps and things like that, no matter whether or not I was doing programming or not, I also had the IT opportunities as part of that. One of the things that I think is very important also is if you don't ask for help or questions or change, things like coming to a LISA conference. How do you get approval to come to a LISA conference? When I was doing this in my earlier days, before I participated in doing tutorials and things like that, I would do trip reports. So I would finish my week here at LISA or at one of the other USENIX conferences, do a trip report to say, here is what I expected to get out of it, here is what I learned, and here is how it applies back to my job. So the next year, I've already planted the seed in my management team to help me get approval for the following year. Same thing applies in other areas as well. Another thing is I've worked on a lot of different books. And as part of doing that, you look for somebody to write a foreword. It could be a friend, it could be somebody who's recognized in the industry. And a lot of people ask me, how did you get a CTO or a CEO to write a foreword? In a very positive way, get them to read your material, not just write a foreword blindly. And it's asking the question. If you don't ask, you'll get an answer of no, basically by default, right? I mean, if we don't try to push the boundaries outside of our comfort zone, we're not going to be able to get an opportunity to move forward on that. The key thing that I wanted to say, here is there are going to be challenges that we go through in life. And if we don't accept those challenges, no matter how hard they seem, we're not going to push our skill set, our boundaries, our comfort level. I'm an extrovert. I think everyone who knows me recognizes that. But even if you are an introvert, you're shy, maybe you feel uncomfortable talking to others, you need to practice getting beyond that. Things like Toastmasters, things like speaking, things like doing lightning talks. There are people who've done lightning talks as their first public speaking in a large group. These are all opportunities that can help you in your career. So with closing, I think one of the things that is going to be really important is push the boundaries. The last thing I'll say is those opportunities may come as unexpected. Early on, I love to play music. I never thought that by starting a band at work, I get an opportunity to open for Foreigner, In Excess, The Killers, John Bon Jovi. I don't do that today. I'm more of a garage band kind of person. But guess what? You don't have to just use technology. There's the other side that actually ties in with that. So anyways, thank you very much, and I'll pass it back.
The next one is a repeat performer, I guess I would say. Brian Sebi is going to improvise a lightning talk. I'm going to give him a couple of seconds to get the topic before I actually start the timer.
Thank you. So as Lee said, I'll be making up whatever topic you guys give me. Throughout this, I may not know exactly what the next word to say is. If I gesture to the audience, someone shout something out, and I'll continue from there. So can I get a sort of broad topic? Is this system administration, like virtualization or metrics? And what's a sort of area within metrics that would be useful? Visualization of metrics. So as a sysadmin, we have a lot of metrics. There's metrics coming from our computers. There's metrics coming from the services we run. There's metrics coming from the power and just everything in our data centers. And in order to really understand those metrics, we have to use visualization. Now, visualization is something that happens with your eyes. It's something that when you take data and you put it into your brain, often visualization takes the form of graphs. Now, graphs are pretty simple. They're just, usually you have pie charts, you have bar charts, you have some sort of charts. What, sorry? Donut charts. A donut chart is a very useful tool because that does tell you, in addition to what metrics you have, of just how hungry you may be for lunch that day. Now, when you have your metrics, you need to somehow find a way to actually use that data. Management will help you manage those metrics. Because you have to take that complicated stuff that you know as a sysadmin and make it understandable by people who aren't as knowledgeable as you are. Now, if your manager asks you, asparagus, you can say, no, we're using donut graphs. So, it's one of those things where you have to kind of like manage your expectations and say, I know you want asparagus, right now we have donuts. Now, in time, you can get to asparagus graphs because much like donuts, they are a different way of doing like a sort of heat chart. And that sort of information can be useful for dashboards, which can show the various food groups that you are graphing. Now, sometimes people are going to ask you, why would you graph, a steak when you could graph cheese and bacon and tomatoes? It sounds delicious. And that is why you want to visualize these metrics. Because as a system administrator, you're hungry. You're hungry for data. You're hungry for knowledge. And management will ask you, gravy. They want that gravy on top of the data. So by visualizing your metrics, you can tell your management, chef. Because chefs, of course, make the best food graphs. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I may ask him to come back and do another one if we have time at the end. Next speaker is Stu Wilson on user experience über alles.
First of all, I'd like to apologize to Lee just a bit. I have kind of invented most of this talk on my walk up to the stage. I do this most of the time for lightning talks. It's the easiest way. So, user experience. This came originally out of Alice's talk. I don't know how many of you were there, the Meat for Structure talk. It was a brilliant talk. And it's all about the system administration team, the DevOps team, as infrastructure. So why not do that? Why not take that to the next level? Everyone here uses a ticketing system, right? If you don't use a ticketing system, raise your hand. Doors to the back of the room. If you use a ticketing system, you have common tickets. Some of you are using a good ticketing system. You can get the metrics out. You can find your 5 most common requests. Those of us who have a less useful ticketing system, that's some human eyes are needed on that. But at the same time, find your 5 most common requests, whatever effort it takes. How many times do you get one of those requests, it doesn't have all the information you need? So, user says to you, I want this. You go back to the user, you say, I need this information. User comes back. It's a back and forth, and then it's done. Why not make an interface to your ticketing system that gathers all of that required information first? So that way, the user says, I want this, here's what you need, by filling out a web form, say. You get all of that information. All the user then hears back is, yeah, that's done. You interrupt them less. You get less annoyed at having to contact the user. There's less delay because you're away from email, they're away from email, whatever. And the job gets done. The job gets done faster. The users are happier because of that. So the users are now giving you all of the information that you need to process a ticket. These are your most common tickets. That means that it's stuff that's easily replicable because it's so common. What's really, really good at doing the same thing over and over again? A computer. So why are you having humans doing all of this? Script it. It is the ultimate goal of system administration, right? Replace yourself with a small shell script and still get paid. I add the last bit on there because some people just stop at being replaced. So make a shell script as much as you can. Script up these common tasks. The information the user provides goes into the script. Give this process to someone on your team who never, never touches the call, the type of call. See that they can run the script perfectly normally without any instruction, without any background information. Then take the human out of the equation. It's all scripted. The human reviews what the script has done because, you know, if someone tries to put in little bobby tables, you want to know about this. But the human reviews, the human says back to the user, done. But just how much of your time have you saved by doing this? Quite a lot. And what can you use that time for? More interesting, fun stuff that will benefit your users, it'll improve your infrastructure, and it'll make your life and it'll make the life of everyone else within your organization easier by improving the user experience of your team and by considering your team as a piece of infrastructure rather than just a group of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Stu. I'm not going to steal the thunder of our next speaker, Chris Jones. I feel like we should be playing music right now.
All right, hi, I'm Chris. I'm an SRE from Google's office in San Francisco. I just wanted to say that we've written a book about site reliability engineering and how Google runs production systems, and it'll be available in print through O'Reilly early next year. The cover animal, fittingly, is the ornate monitor lizard. Topics include reliability budgets, monitoring, release engineering, load balancing, systems engineering, hiring and training SREs, recovering from operational overload, reducing toil, scaling MySQL, and migrating exabytes of data from one storage system to another. So we're really looking forward to this book. It has something like 60 authors from across Google, and we're hoping that you will enjoy it too. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Andy, you here? Andy is going to talk about Easy Build, an open source tool written in Python.
Hi, so I'm Andy George. I work at Ghent University in Belgium. So Belgium is the country, not Brussels, if you're not familiar with it. Easy Build is an in-house open source tool that we've written to install scientific software applications. Now, maybe most of you or some of you never touch that side of your systems or have other people on your teams do the software installations for users. But since we're a pretty small team, we get to do most of everything. So the tool is targeted towards HPC systems, but it's not limited to that. You can basically use it to deploy the software that we support pretty much everywhere, on your laptop, on your containers, on your VMs, whatever. So the idea is that we install software in a reproducible manner, and we install software from the ground up. So that means that we install the top-level package, but also all the dependencies. You can specify specific versions of what dependencies you want to use. We wrap around existing installation procedures, because the problem with most of the packages that we need to install for our users is that they don't have great installation procedures. If you're lucky, there's a configure script, and then you can do configure, make, install. But most of the time, that's not the case. Sometimes you have make files with hard-coded paths in there. Sometimes you don't have make files, and just a build script that somebody hacked together to install the stuff on his machine. We wrap around all of that. So we have a sort of DSL that you can use to provide support for new packages. We support, I think, almost 500 or more packages out of the box. And installing some top-level packages like PETC or Wharf OpenFOAM is just as simple as entering a single command. It will fetch all the sources that you need. It will build stuff using specific build flags for your hardware platform, which is also important. And if you want to move the same thing to another system, so suppose you get a new HPC system or whatever system with a different architecture, you can just rerun it again. It will make sure that everything, starting from binutils, compiler, the MPI stack, mathematical libraries, all that stuff is just in exactly the same version, so your users can migrate to the new system in a very simple fashion. Now, some of you might be wondering why we don't use RPMs or DEPs or whatever package manager we could use. The sad truth is that even if these packages were supported pretty well, which most of the time they're not, we want to make sure that we can have different versions of the same tool installed on our systems. So we can have versions compiled for OpenMPI or for Intel MPI. We can have versions compiled with the Intel compiler, with GCC, with your other favorite compilers that you might use. And all of these need to be available at the same time on a shared file system, so it can be made available on all the nodes that we're using it on. We support installing stuff through jobs on our HPC system, so you can just launch jobs across your cluster to get all the dependencies installed as swiftly as possible. We have extensive support for testing, so you can install a package, and then you can specify a certain number of tests that you run to make sure that the files are actually there, which is important, that the package actually executes and does what you would expect it to do. We have dry run support. We log pretty much everything throughout the build procedure, so if there's an issue, you can easily track it. So if any of you know people that might be interested in this or might get some help when they're installing stuff from this, come talk to me after the lightning talks. I have business cards. We have an IRC channel on Freenode. We have a community that's starting to get larger. So people from like Jülich, TAC, other HPC systems or sites across the globe are participating in this. We support, so after, that's important, before my time runs out. So after the packages are generated and installed, after they are installed, we generate environment modules. So we have support for Tcl environment modules and LMOD. So LMOD is like the newest fancy thing out of TAC. If you haven't heard of it and you use environment modules, please also take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. He's gotten the closest to the full 5 minutes. So I want to remind the rest of our speakers, you do have a full 5 minutes to give your talk. Our next speaker is Eric Logan on I Did Not Prepare for This.
Good morning. That's actually not true. When I realized yesterday I would be giving a talk, I actually forced myself to sit down and write some notes. But when I saw the sign that said submit a lightning talk, I was like, yes, immediately, this is the thing I want to do. But I didn't have anything ready. And I said to myself, wait, this is actually a perfect opportunity. As systems administrators, particularly, we often are thrust into situations that we're not ready for. And in a situation like that, when the advice you always hear, which is, it's so textbook, it's all over the place, the advice is don't panic. And that advice is actually fairly useless because it doesn't tell you what to do. So I want to share with you a couple of strategies that I have used to not panic. I find that panic is a thing you do when you don't know what you should be doing. So when you find yourself in a panicking situation, the very first thing I want to suggest to you is do nothing. Unless something is literally on fire, in which case you probably already know what you should be doing, doing nothing over a short period is actually not necessarily the worst thing. And it will certainly give you an opportunity to sort of sit down and figure out what you should be doing. Google your question, ask for help. But the worst thing you can do in a situation where you're like, oh my goodness, now what, is to simply charge blindly forward. At best, you'll do nothing. At worst, you'll make things considerably worse. Problems, I find, fall into two categorizations. There are fast problems and there are slow problems. The worst thing about fast problems is that they happen immediately. So if you can sort of triage and stabilize them, you can turn them to slow problems, which are a lot easier to deal with. Because with a slow problem, you can sort of sit down and take your time. We all like learning, I hope. And slow problems are learning experiences. But slow problems have another thing, which is that in a situation where I'm presented with a slow problem, I don't know what to do. So I will procrastinate. Because sometimes doing a thing you already know how to do is a lot easier than not doing anything. But that just means that procrastination is slow panic. And you can use exactly the same strategies to try and figure out what's going on. So, realize that you are in a situation where you're perhaps flailing a bit. Maybe you're not the first person to have this problem. A lot of times when I'm thrust into situations where I don't know what is going on, it's just because I haven't been there yet. And usually somebody else has been there first. So, ask around. Maybe your coworkers know what's going on. Googling questions is becoming such an essential skill for systems administrators. Hopefully I don't have to tell you how to do that. And it's the whole reason that Stack Overflow and Stack Exchange exist. Discovery and learning are what keeps our jobs, for me, interesting and fun, and hopefully for you as well. So when I tell you not to panic, it's because, congratulations, you have encountered a learning opportunity. You can do it, and good luck.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Deb Nicholson, and she's going to talk on the GNU Media Goblin.
Thanks. So in addition to often working on the software patent issue, I found that I didn't have enough things to do to make free and open source software awesome. So I have taken on an unpaid role as the community manager for GNU Media Goblin. We're actually a weird GNU project. We're one of the only web-based GNU projects. Many of you who are familiar with the GNU Linux operating system know that it's mostly an operating system. We're not an operating system. We're a web project. What we do is decentralized media hosting that is organized around the individual instead of around the media type. So instead of like, oh, I have my rock music on SoundCloud, and I have my manifesto on LiveJournal, and I have my ASCII art somewhere secret and weird in my machine, you have it all in one place, and it's organized around you. The other thing that's great about having it decentralized means that instead of having a many-to-one relationship with the hoster of your media, you have a many-to-many relationship. So this involves a little bit of extra systems administration, which probably doesn't scare anyone in this room, right? But in exchange, you get much more control over who you share with, how you share, what kind of media types you want to support, whether you want to actually strip out the EXIF data or not on your photos, all of the things. There's no longer all the comments or none of the comments. You get control. So control is really kind of the key thing for us. We started this project when we were looking at like, wow, when the NSA hoovered up everyone's data, they kind of made 10 phone calls, like 10. That's not very many phone calls. I would like to make it a pain in the ass for them. So we want legions and legions of places. We're like, oh yeah, hey, Sarah, could I get like your 3 users? Like, yeah, I'm a little busy. Let me get back to you. And then times like a billion. So that's one of the things that we want to provide for people. But maybe you don't like the way that we're doing things, and that is totally great. We also have this under the AGPL license, which if people are familiar with the GNU public license, you know that allows you to share back your changes. The Affero general public license allows you to do the same thing with web. So you come to our website, you can take all the code, you can make your own version of Media Goblin. You can take and use anything that we're building and incorporate it into your stuff. So maybe you're excited to have that, and maybe you're not. Maybe you're going to fork it. All of those things are great. We're at MediaGoblin.org. And we love feedback. One of the things that we really want Media Goblin to be is a project that people actually use, which, maybe that sounds sort of simple and obvious, but not necessarily always the case. So we really love feedback. We did an event last year called SpinachCon, where you kind of let your favorite free software project know if it has spinach in its teeth, right? So we gave people spinach pizza and spinach salad and then asked them to tell us what was wrong with our software and why it was annoying to use so that we could fix it. If you also like complaining about your experience on the internet, come on over. We would love to hear from you. Or maybe you like to fix problems. Maybe you're one of those kinds of folks. We also like that, whether it's translation, writing documentation, artwork, code, of course, and looking at the documentation. So all of those things are welcome. We'd love to have you. And then finally, if you're too busy for any of that, we will take your cash. So MediaGoblin.org, come hang out with us on Freenode. Come grab any of the stuff in the PyPump library for Federation. If you want to build your own federated thing, come share your ASCII art with us. We have a ton of pictures of children in penguin onesies because those are the kind of folks we are, and we'd love to have you join us. Thanks.
Thank you. And a repeat performance. Stu Wilson talking about the UX of you.
The titles are actually the wrong way around because, as I said, I was inventing the talk on the way up. So, initially I talked about the UX of your team as a piece of infrastructure. Once you've done that, once you've considered that, what you need to realize is that user experience is a social engineering tool, which is a posh way of saying it's a con trick. You get your users to like you, you get them to think of you as being on their side. It's no longer you making the systems, them having to use the systems. They can want things and you will provide them in their mind. And the user experience that you provide to those people is what will shape what they do. How many of you have played a game called Portal? Show of hands, very quick. How many of you have played through it with the developer soundtrack on? Many, many fewer hands. You really should. The developer soundtrack goes through every level and points out where that level's design shapes what the player does, where they look, what they do, what actions they think are available. So, and that is all driven from the user experience. That is the user experience being used to socially engineer the player into figuring out how to play the game. All of this is great. What does it have to do with anything? Well, once you've got your users' trust, that's when you can really con them. How many of you have users who have roots and probably really shouldn't? Again, show of hands. Yeah, that's about what I thought. Your users have roots. Some of these users may be sales. They may be marketing. They might be finance. Everyone's had to deal with a Sage or a SAP installation and configuration. Or they may be academics who need MATLAB and can never remember the config options to get it to speak to your special Snowflake license server. Surely, please God, that's not just me. So, how do you deal with that? You automate it. Every platform now, well, every platform, most major platforms have a way of providing users with an app store, whether that's running up a private app store in Monkey on OS X, whether it's turning on the application catalog in SCCM for your Windows users, whether that's setting up a private repo for your Linux users, whatever. Pre-configure everything that your users do that might need root. Give them pre-configured packages that talk to the license server. Pre-configure Sage, SAP, whatever. Anything complex, pre-configure it, and give your users a one-click install that they do not need to elevate for, because I guarantee you, apart from developers, users do not want root. Developers want root because developers are special snowflakes. Users don't want root. They see a UAC prompt, they see a sudo prompt, and they think, oh God, not again. What's this doing? They just click through, they put in their password, they're not thinking about what they're doing or what the thing that's prompting them is wanting to do. This is why UAC and related systems are an absolutely terrible way of stopping malware. Software has trained people to elevate to root whenever something asks. So take away the need to elevate to root. Make it convenient. Make it nice. Sure, users can manage their own machines. They can have root, but they don't get your app store. They don't get the convenience. So you are providing incentives for them to give it up. People will, and I've done this. I was part of the team at the University of Edinburgh. We wrote an in-house application store type thing for Windows XP back in 2006, I think it was. And we got users coming saying, cool, how do I get hooked up to this? And we said, well, we'll take your machine, we'll install it, but you will no longer have local admin access. Initially, we got people saying, oh. Then some people tried it. And they said, actually, this is really cool. They told other academics, they told people in finance, they said, this is really cool. I no longer have to stress about that. We got people coming to us, begging us to take away their root access. All of a sudden, your environment's a hell of a lot more secure. You don't have to deal with users randomly bricking entire boxes. And yeah, users will beg you to take root away if you make the experience good enough for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Diamond? Aaron is going to speak on the small epiphany he had at his first LISA conference.
Hello. Hello. Well, this is my first LISA conference, and there were so many, thank you. Yes, I'm convinced that the one of my 8 bosses that actually signed off on this has absolutely no idea what I do for a living. So it's a blessing in disguise that I actually showed up here. Well, let me go ahead and tell you that there were so many fascinating technologies that were discussed this week. Like, for example, Chef and Puppet and Ansible. And by about Monday morning, I was convinced I had absolutely no idea what the hell everyone was talking about. So that having been said, seriously, I did change my career. 10 years ago, I taught high school Spanish. 5 years ago, I finished graduate school with a degree in recording engineering. I was a MIDI professor for 3 years. I was a sales engineer for 3 years. Now I'm this. So I'm going to go ahead and say that when you go to work and you come to the conclusion that your lab is operating on a level that is out there, and you find that folks can't necessarily relate to your situation, it gets exhausting fast. If you know somebody out there like me, at all, first thing, give that person a hug. Damn it, they need it. Second of all, send them to me. I feel very compelled to be able to start some sort of user group or support group for folks to change their career, and they kind of need some sort of outlet where they can feel like they ask questions, and it's cool. And that having been said, I want to thank you. Thank you for everybody who has been kind to me, who has heard my spiel about how I kind of stumbled into my career and changed everything over and kind of am moving forward with support and administration. So thank you so much for taking time and not judging me, at least out loud. And that was great. You've entertained my questions and you've offered support. Everybody who's had the opportunity to speak with me knows that I have a lab that needs some serious repair. And there were times where I felt like, man, I really can't compete with a lot of this stuff. I don't have a ton of Linux systems. I have a lot of Windows Enterprise systems. It's like apples and oranges. And I kind of felt, And then I said, you know what? A year ago, my lab didn't run. And it's because I wasn't there. My lab works. So I was proud. So I wanted to say, thanks for helping me remind me that, it is all worth it. And I'm going to go back to my lab, and it's not going to be the world's greatest environment. I'm going to have my 8 bosses, 8, like Office Space, yeah. I have 8 bosses, and I don't please any of them, and it's kind of a drag. But that, you know what? I'm proud of my lab, and I want my users to be happy with my experience, and I want to make sure my lab runs. I'm going to fight for my lab. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And our last presenter, Julian, are you here? So Julian asked me to show a YouTube video before, but I'm not going to be able to do that. So I put the URL up on the screen. I believe this will also be, the screen is also included in the video, so hopefully people watching the video later will be able to see the URL. Please go and view this when you get a chance.
I try really hard to break the rules here, but apparently I didn't succeed. But check out the video. So I wanted to talk about a small tool we've been working on at Mozilla to handle secret management. And as you may know, distributing secrets and password to servers is really hard. You either do it by hand and having a human actually copy these secrets over to the target systems, or you have to trust some part of your infrastructure to do it. When you go full DevOps, if you're in Amazon and you have your CloudFormation in place and you scale up and down, there are no humans who can actually copy these secrets over. So you have to trust a part of the infrastructure to distribute these secrets. This is really hard to do. Most infrastructure will store the secrets either in a private Git repo or in an S3 bucket or in some place where the servers can retrieve them. But what happens when you actually leak that repository or that Git repo to the public? Suddenly you have to rotate all of these secrets, and it's a drag. It's a lot of work. So there are projects like Hiera eYAML or CredStash, Sneaker, Vault. All of these will help you manage your secrets better. But eventually, you need to cater that secret management tool to your environment, and not all tools will fit all environments. So at Mozilla, I work in the cloud services team doing security. We run into that problem, and we needed a very specific tool that could encrypt YAML files and manage that encryption with AWS KMS. So we wrote something called SOAPS, S-O-P-S. You can find it on GitHub. It's github.com/Mozilla/SOAPS. And it's an editor of encrypted files. It will wrap encryption, decryption around your text editor, Vim, Nano, Emacs, whatever you use. And it will let you encrypt the content of YAML file or JSON file or even binary files with keys that can be managed either by AWS KMS or by PGP. So the way we use this is the sysadmins on their machine will encrypt their YAML files and store them encrypted in Git. And our build process goes through Jenkins, and the secrets are stored encrypted in S3, and they get downloaded into the EC2 instances. And only when they arrive on the EC2 instances, the instance itself will call KMS and decrypt the secret file. So the entire pipeline uses encrypted secrets, and it's only when you get to the final instance that you decrypt your secrets. If there is an incident during the pipeline or anywhere in the publication process, what you're leaking is an encrypted file. So you can use that with AWS and KMS. You can use it with PGP. We usually have both in place, both KMS and PGP. So if we ever lose access to AWS, we still have a backup PGP keys that can decrypt the files. So that's a TLDR of SOAPS. And it's a tool to store secrets encrypted and manage them encrypted. It's fully available on GitHub, and feel free to check it out and come to me if you have any question. I can probably do some demos on my laptop too, or check out the video. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone who attended, and I'd like to especially thank all of our speakers today. I hope you get a good conference the rest of the afternoon. Travel safely when you go home. Join us for lunch downstairs in the ballroom. Thanks, and have a great afternoon.